Hello and welcome to PCI Webinars. Today's webinar, How to Write for the Library Press and Make Editors Love You, with Kathy Dempsey. Kathy wrote the popular How To, The Accidental Library Marketer, and founded her own marketing consultancy, Libraries Are Essential. Her work is dedicated to helping librarians and information professionals promote their value and expertise in order to gain respect and funding. Kathy has been the editor of Marketing Library Services newsletter for 22 years and was formerly editor-in-chief of Computers in Libraries magazine. She's an active member of the New Jersey Library Association and chair of the Library Marketing and Communications Conference. She gives presentations throughout the United States and Canada, always sprinkling them with humor to make marketing concepts more interesting and accessible. She continues to fight the stereotypes that librarians are boring and that marketing is a dirty word. Coming to you now from New Jersey, it's Kathy Dempsey.
That's a great introduction. Thank you very much, Anne, and good morning, everyone, wherever you are. I see a lot of you are in Florida. To be in Florida on this lovely day would be nice. I am coming in soon, though, to speak at an advocacy conference, so can't complain. But for this morning, we're talking about something different. We're talking about getting published in different library magazines, newsletters, publications, wherever you want to publish. There really is kind of an art and science to this, and I have been an editor in the library world for about 22, 23 years now. And before that, I edited other trade publications. Journalism is my background. However, I've gotten to know an awful lot about libraries and about marketing in the past 20-some years. So I am uniquely positioned to tell you how to deal with other editors of library publications. Okay, let's get started. I am going to start with a poll question, so I'm going to put Anna back to work right away. You can answer this question on your screen here, just so I have an idea. Do you have something in mind already that you're wanting to write about? There are choices for yes, no, kind of. I have an idea. Because I'm guessing that a lot of people here already have something in mind and they're ready to jump on it. Okay, so some ideas are percolating. A few people still voting. Okay, interesting. So just a couple of you, it looks like, are have an idea that they're ready to go on. That's great. For the rest of you, if you don't yet, or if you are just have it sort of ruminating, that's completely fine. What you hear today may alter what you are thinking about writing, or the spin that you're going to use, or the way you're thinking about writing it. So let's get into more of the how-to of this. Okay. This is kind of interesting. We always say how first impressions are so important, and they are. It's even if it's a pitch to someone, we think of first impressions as meeting someone, shaking their hand, figuring out who they are, but that happens online too. If you're emailing an editor, even if it's a form that you're filling in to email something, editors really take a very close look at their first contact with you. So I'm going to ask you to put serious time and effort into the queries that you make out, because it really is your first test. You may believe that, this is just a quick form, they just want my name and my quick idea, and then I'll impress them after that. But no, don't do that. That would be a problem, because really we want to see exactly how well you write as soon as possible, because that has a lot to do with whether an editor will accept your query or want to keep talking to you about it. Okay, I am going to stick on this one for a while because I want to tell you some other things in this. So I just ask you to impress editors when you first contact them. Here's exactly how to do that. And again, you don't have to write down all of these points because they're on the handout. First of all, you want to be familiar with the publication that you're pitching to. A lot of people have sent pitches to me over the years saying, I'm not sure if you cover this sort of thing, but if you do, I'd like to write about XYZ. Okay, don't ever do that. Don't ever say, I'm not sure if your publication covers this, but. The key is to be sure about that beforehand, and there's lots of ways that you can do that. The easiest is to, of course, if you're already a reader, if you regularly see this publication, you'll know it well and you'll know what sorts of things they cover. But the easiest thing to do really is to look at its website. Look at not only the content of past issues, but look for the about this publication. Look for tips and tricks. Look for a list of articles or topics that they want to cover. Look for the mission statement and determine for yourself whether this is something that this publication will cover. So again, this is where you put the time and effort into your query. When you're sure that you're pitching to the proper organization, you want to start, if you're emailing them, or even if you're filling in a form with a subject line, don't just discount that little tiny subject line. That's really important because that is my first contact with you. So if your email subject line is kind of long and wandering and not to the point and has typos, that gives me a bad impression of you right away. Your opening line, very similarly, tells me a lot about you. Do you get right to the point? Do you kind of mess around and say, hi, I've never done this before. I don't know if you'll like this. Don't do that. Be confident in yourself because you have checked a publication to make sure that it's right for what you want to publish about. For goodness sakes, spell the name of the editor and the publication correctly. I have actually gotten email queries from people that have been addressed to Karen Dempsey instead of Kathy Dempsey, which is actually my name. That's always a little scary. Don't do that, ever. Even though it may be just a quick little one-time mistake that you made, it tells me that you don't double-check what you're doing and you're not careful and you're not detail-oriented. Okay, what else can you do as far as first impressions? Prove that you're literate in some of the ways that I just mentioned. Double check everything that you type, spell check it, maybe even have someone else read it, because as we all know, spell check is not a fail-safe. There are lots of words that spell check will accept that you probably don't really want to have in your email. Identify yourself to me. Tell me, your editor, something a little bit about yourself, about your work. Mention any related expertise, whatever you're going to write about. Let's say if you want to write about collection development, then don't give me your whole entire CV in a form or in an email, but mention your experience and expertise that's relevant directly to the topic that you want to cover. One that some people don't think about, but editors always think about, if you have any artwork or images that you can use for this article, if you have photos or charts or anything else, mention that in your pitch because that tells me that you're thinking ahead. Editors are always going to need, almost always, unless you're publishing in a really dry black and white textual journal, editors will need some kind of images to support your article and to draw readers' attention to it. And if you have some, that's excellent. Tell me up front, and it will show me that you're thinking ahead and that you know what you're doing, you know something about publishing and the needs of the editor. And above all, at this point, put clarity above creativity. When you're pitching to me, it's nice to see that you're creative, but don't try to write something cutesy and fun like, a Stephen King introductory paragraph or a Michener, thing to impress me. I don't want to see what's cute. I don't want to see what's clever. I want to see how you talk and how you write, how literate you are, and how clear you can be. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Now, okay, let's go on to the next slide. I hope that you all like my funny little rosy theme here. I know it's a little bit smarmy and a little cutesy, but just because this talk was about not only pitching to editors, but how to make an editor love you, I liked this PowerPoint theme and thought it might perk things up a little bit. As you will also see, the way that I'm describing things is also about love. So what I mean here by understand what she's going through, understand what an editor's job is like, what's happening on the other end of the publishing process. And the more you know about that, the more apt you are to get into that publishing process and to do, not only to have an article query accepted, but to also do really well with it and maybe be asked to write again or recommended to write something else. So let me tell you a little bit about my world, the publishing process. Here's what I go through every day. It really is quite labor intensive, and it's a multifaceted process. And I don't mean to sound here like I'm whining, even though I could so easily whine about my work for hours on end, like anyone else could if they tried. But again, helping you understand this will help you to get your pitches accepted and to work and play better with your new editor friends. Okay, here's what happens basically in the process. People like you send a query in to editors. The editors probably get many more queries than they are able to use for any given month, any given publication. So we compare them to each other, maybe go back to each potential author and ask questions. What did you mean by this? How would you spin this? What would you cover? Because remember, especially when a publication has a theme, a monthly theme for that issue, everyone is going to be sending queries about the same general topic. So this is where your clarity comes in. You can't just say, I want to write about collection development. Okay, well, 20 other people are sending queries about collection development articles for this same issue. So what exactly will yours be like? What aspect will you be covering? What will it be about? What perspective will you be writing from? So make sure that all that's very clear. Once I understand your query and can compare it with the others, let's assume that I'm going to accept your proposal. I will contact you with the exact assignment. I'll send you guidelines. I'll send you a deadline. I may send you very specific instructions for certain parts of the process, like how to send your artwork or what to include in your biography that will be published with it. Each organization has slightly different rules and guidelines, so you can't just assume that you know how to write for any given publication. So, okay, I've gotten your query, I've accepted it, I've sent you the assignment with specific guidelines. You do the writing, send it back to me. When I first see your article, I do a quick check to make sure everything's clear and has it met my expectations? Have you delivered the content that you promised that you were going to write about? If not, I'm going to send it back to you with some questions. If it's fine, I'm going to start editing. And what we usually edit for first is content, relevance. Is this really what people are going to want to read? We also do fact checking, link checking. Then usually there's a Q&A back and forth with authors just to clarify a few small points, hopefully just a few small points. Some publishers will send articles back to you for revisions. Some will only ask you a few questions and then they will get your answers and do the revising on their end. Each one is different. Each publication has different timelines. Sometimes you have 3 months to do this back and forth process with maybe a journal or something that is just quarterly. But if this is a weekly or monthly, you're not going to have a lot of back and forth time. You're probably going to need to get answers back to your editor pretty quickly and get everything fixed up and on the road to the next step, which is proofreading. The proofreader may turn up additional questions or concerns that then you'll be asked about. Once you make it through proofreading, your manuscript will go to the graphics department or the art department. It'll be laid out, the images will be put in, captions will be put in, photo credits, all that sort of thing. And then internally, most publishers do what I call final checks. Once all the articles are laid out in the page format, we look at each page together, make sure that the jumps are correct. Jumps are when the text goes from one page to another. Make sure that no words fell out. Make sure that the continued on page X is really the page that it jumps to. Look at all those little things. Finally, we send it to the printer or send it to the person who will post online. And then we go through the paperwork. Everyone has paperwork at the end of the job. Ours are things like getting your invoice, maybe copyright forms, making sure payments get out, sending published copies or sending links to you. So there's really a lot that does go on behind the scenes, and we are always under pressure. There is always another deadline. Even for a quarterly journal, you think that there's lots of time to do this, but you're always working an issue or two ahead, which brings me to one other little thing that I'd like, a real little pro tip that you may want to know. When you are sending either a pitch to your editor at first, or you're going back and forth with questions, things like that, it's really, really nice if you put the issue in your email subject line. Like I'm going to write for Computers and Libraries May 17 issue, because when I was editor of Computers and Libraries, I was working on maybe 3 different issues at once. One in the query stage, one in the editing stage, one in the final stages going to press. And I had a lot of people who would send me emails like, question about my article. Well, okay, working on 3 issues, I'm probably working with 25 different articles at once. So who are you and which article and which issue really helps the editor to understand your question and get back to you more quickly if they don't have to dig up who you are and what you're talking about. Again, sounds like whining, but for people with intensely deadline-driven jobs, every little thing that can make things go faster for them is a blessing. So thank you for doing that. Finally, one other thing I want to say here in the publishing process. I don't know if any of you are thinking about writing with co-authors, because a lot of people get intimidated by trying to write something on their own. And I understand that, but from my end, adding co-authors adds complexity. It makes things more difficult in a number of ways. And if anyone's interested in that and you're thinking about co-authors, you mention that in the chat and I can go into a little bit more detail about that. Okay. As in any good love story, dealing with rejection is something that you need to be prepared for. Even if your proposal is rejected, it doesn't mean it was a horrible idea. It doesn't mean that it's not worth writing about. There are a lot of reasons that editors can reject an article. One of them is that it doesn't fit the current issue that they're looking for content for. If it doesn't fit the theme of the issue, or you didn't realize there was a theme, that can be one easy way that they'll reject it now and say, oh, maybe maybe in 6 months we're going to be covering that topic. Do you want to wait until then? Another reason for rejection is there were many similar queries coming in on the same topic, especially if it's a themed issue, and some of them just edged you out a little bit. They had a better spin. They were more open for something that more readers would want. Sometimes people send in queries that are so narrow and so focused that it's something that really only a handful of people would want to read about. Usually we're looking for things that are more open and interesting to the larger number of readers, to the majority of subscribers. Also, if there's not a theme to the issue, sometimes people have already published something similar. You want to check the recent 6 months of the most recent back issues to make sure that your article hasn't just been published by someone else. And the one thing that you won't know, though, is what's coming up in the next few issues, because they have probably already been assigned and you haven't seen them yet, but maybe someone has published an article very similar to what you're querying about. One more reason that the editor might turn you down is the red flags that I talked about before. If in your query your writing is poor, you didn't follow the instructions, you didn't fill out the whole form well, you misspelled the editor's name, or you just don't seem to have a good enough grasp of the topic in your query, that's probably going to get turned down. So again, this is my final plea to write your query as clearly and as well as you possibly can, because no one likes rejection. Okay, let me talk for a minute. I don't know how familiar you all are with the differences between print and online. And I hope you'll excuse me. Sometimes I slow down a little bit while I'm speaking because I'm also monitoring the chat windows. Okay, no questions yet, so let's go on to the differences between print and online. It's one thing to read them. You can see the differences when you're reading, but you have to think a little bit more about them when you're writing. If you're writing something for online, your text should be short and punchy. You'll notice that people don't usually, unless it's a deep research article, people aren't scrolling through 10 screens when they're reading an online article. They're shorter. They have less detail, but more links. So rather than explaining every little thing about your topic, much of the information you're going to bring it up, say a little something about it, and add a link for more information. Of course, on the print side of that, the articles can be longer, they can be deeper, they will have fewer URLs, because in a lot of cases, depending on if there's an online version of the print magazine, someone's going to have to sit and type all of those URLs out, and some of them can be quite lengthy. So one of the things that you'll want to check on if you're going to publish something in print and you want to look really slick, ask the editor how your URLs should be represented. Do they want to have the full URL, long as it may be, or would they rather you shorten it using a tool like the tiny URL or the bit.ly link shortener? Sometimes they will want you to do that. Sometimes they'll be happy to shorten the links for you. But that's something that you might want to ask about if it's not part of the writing guidelines that they send you. Graphics is another thing, maybe the biggest difference between print and online. The resolution of the graphics that you send. I don't know how many of you are into digital images or artwork or photography. But if you're not, graphics, when you see something on the web, you're like, oh, that's cool. I can just, pull that off the website and copy it and use it for print. The reason you can't do that is web graphics are very low resolution. They're very small files, usually 72 dpi, which is 72 dots per inch. But for print resolution, to make a photograph or a picture or a chart look really crisp in print, it has to be 300 dpi at least, as opposed to 72 dpi. So please don't send low resolution images or any little thing that you just snagged from a web page, because it's not going to work in print. I have spent many hours going back and forth with authors saying, no, I need a better quality graphic. Can you send this in high resolution? But they don't know what high res means, and they don't ask, and they just send like a differently cropped version of the picture. And sometimes it can take a lot of back and forth to get it through people's minds. This is also something to be super aware of as you're deciding what to write, or as you're gathering your research and your ideas, because if you're in a situation where you can take photographs to accompany your article, or you're creating the images from scratch, you'll want to know to create them in the highest quality you can. Now, high quality is always good, because even if you're publishing for the web, it's easy to take a picture and change it to the lower quality version when it goes online. That's no problem. But you can't take something that starts off as low quality and make it higher quality for print. It just doesn't work that way. A couple other quick things that I'll go through, the differences between print and online. Oftentimes, online publication style is a little bit less formal than print. Timelines, deadlines are often shorter if you're doing something in print. If you're publishing something for online, because the web just moves at a faster pace, and you're not sending anything to a printer that takes 3 weeks to print it and print the cover separately and bind it together and ship it out. So web publishing is usually a little bit faster process, and your audience is more likely to skim. Don't forget, on the web, that's another reason to write shorter for the web. They're much more likely to skim, making your links and your images even more important. Okay, hopefully that described for all of you those differences, something to think about. So let's go back to whining about my job, shall we? Okay, not really, but here are things not to do with editors. There are so many, and this goes back to, again, understanding the editor's side of the process, or the publisher's side of the process. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm whining, and I know it's going to come off that way, but these are real, actual things, not excuses, not complaints. This is just the way it works. And if you want your editor to love you, you will help her to make her job easier. When you email an editor, don't expect an immediate response. As I mentioned before, I could be working on 3 different issues of a publication, sometimes working on multiple publications. Remember the deadlines. So I am not in that type of job where I can answer your email right away. Occasionally I can. Often it's just going to have to wait hours or a couple of days until I'm back in the mindset for your publication or your topic or your article. A favorite one. When you have a deadline, if I give you a deadline of, oh, let's say April 11th, your article's due April 11th. I've actually had people email their article to me at 11:30 p.m. on April 11th with a note saying, "Yay, I made the deadline, haha." Okay, might be funny to you, really not funny to me. When I give a deadline, that date when your article is supposed to come in is the date that I expect to start working on it. So my schedule, my work schedule, depends on when your articles come in. So just because you're within the 24-hour period of your due date does not mean that you're on time. Definitely have your things there the morning of the deadline day, if not before. Thank you very much. Something else that would make me want to slap people, and has made me want to slap people in the past, I'll admit it, when you ignore the writer's guidelines that I send. If I send you a little bit of a style guideline, please look at it and make your text fit the style. Sometimes these are small things. Some publications will say, oh, include all your URLs, I almost said UFOs, include all of your URLs in parentheses in the body of your article. Some say include your URLs in brackets. Others will say don't put any URLs within your text, put a footnote number and have all the URLs at the end as footnotes. This is something that sounds easy to change, but if you're sending me an article with 25 links and you have done the links the wrong way, that's going to take me a long time to fix or to put it back together. And that's some reason that I may actually send it back to you and ask you to redo all that. So definitely look at the style guidelines before you send something in. Links, though, that example that I just gave you, they're easy to fix compared to some of the other problems, especially the writing style. As you know, different publications will have more formal styles than others, but it's hard to describe to people who aren't editors or complete language geeks. You're probably familiar with the first person, the third person difference. The first person is saying, I wrote this article. The third person is, this article was written. If you have put together your article completely in third person when the publication demands first person, that is not easy to fix. It affects nearly every sentence. It definitely affects every paragraph. That's something that the editor would send back to you to totally rewrite. It's very difficult and time-consuming to fix that. So always study your guidelines carefully before you start to write. This is also one reason why a lot of publications don't accept pre-written articles. They want you to send your query to be accepted and then get the assignment so that you can write to the specifications of that particular magazine. When you write something yourself and turn in your full article and say, okay, will you accept this? This is why a lot of places don't do that, because they'd have to send it back to you for rewrites if they have a lot of specific guidelines. And especially in trade or business publications, which is what these library publications are. It's not just a cutesy little, teen magazine or something like that. Journals especially have very long lists of guidelines about what they will and will not accept. So I can't even though I just did overstate this point, I can't overstate the importance of following your style guides. Don't skip any parts of the instructions. Don't skip any checklists. This is what keeps you from sending your article without your byline, without your biography, without the proper information or the lists, or sending your images in the wrong formats. Something else that has happened to me just a few times that really made me want to slap people is just simply not sending the assignment. I've given someone an assignment. I've given them the deadline. I've checked in a couple times, are you writing? Are you on target? Is this going okay? And they'll say, yes, fine. Deadline comes and goes. No article has come in. And occasionally I'll get back to the person, and I've actually had someone say to me, oh, yeah, I got kind of busy and I decided I wasn't going to write this after all. Never told me. Just decided. Just kind of dropped out. And the reason that that's so awful is, unlike airlines, we don't overbook. Most editors do not take or assign more copy than they can use in a specific issue. So if you drop out, and I had you down on my sheet for filling 5 pages of this issue, now I have 5 empty pages. And I have to really scramble to fill it with something else. I don't have extra articles to stuff in there. So if you decide, things do come up. I have had people on the verge of a deadline who have had sudden deaths of family members, who have had other crises, and they come to me 2 days before and say, oh my gosh, this happened, I'm so sorry, I can't finish. That's not good for me, but I'm not going to slap them for that. But it just, don't decide that you're going to either not do the assignment or that you're changing the assignment. Don't send me something other than what we agreed on, and then when I question you, come back to me and say, oh, well, I was halfway through and decided I didn't really like that topic so much. I decided to kind of do something different instead. Well, maybe someone else is already writing that different article for that themed issue. So really stick with your topic, stick with your spin, stick with everything in your assignment, unless you contact your editor far ahead of time to see if you can switch it up. Don't send low quality graphics. I mentioned that before. Don't embed your graphics into your Word documents. This happens to me quite often, despite the fact that I do send detailed writing guidelines. People want me to know where in the article their charts and their pictures should go. So they just stuff them into the Word document. And the first thing that I do in that case is take them out of the Word document. Because in professional publishing, it's not like a WordPress site or something like that. If someone is working in Quark Express or Adobe Illustrator, the artist will run in all the text first and get that formatted, and then will add the images in the areas where they should go. But oftentimes, you'll see when you're reading, an image is not right next to its reference in the text, just because of the way the words flow. So putting images into your document doesn't help us at all, because even if the artist did flow them in that way, they would, trust me, it would be a mess. So don't try to help us that much. The better thing to do is, in the text of your Word document, just put a note in a bracket or in a different color text or something that says, bar graph 1 goes here. That's perfect. Then I don't have to do anything with it, and the graphic artist will see the note and she'll put everything in the right spot. One last thing here. When you use acronyms, you have to define them, unless it's something really, really well known like ALA or SLA or ACRL. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going back to you with questions so you can define all of those. The very, very last thing I'm going to tell you on this slide is, don't trust spell check. Okay? Don't trust spell check alone. Have other human beings besides yourself read your articles before you submit them. I'm going to tell you a quick story, and this actually happened to me quite recently. Someone submitted something all about their city's public library. Blah, 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 public library. Right up front, in the first mention with the library's full name, they were missing an L from that. And it wasn't from the word library, it was from the word public. So they were naming this organization as a pubic library. This was not good. And this almost went to press. Actually, it got through a couple other people before it got to me. And we almost printed something about a lovely and well-meaning pubic library. So this is why spell check alone is not enough. You really need to have someone else, even before you send this to your editor, have someone else look at it and make your article the best that you possibly can before sending it in. Okay, couple quick expert tips here. If you want your date/editor to return your calls, take this advice. Write what you know. This is the oldest writing tip in the book. Don't try to learn something new and do some, like writing an article to be published with your name on it is not supposed to be the experience where you learn about the topic. Know the topic first, then write about what you know. Trust me, it will make a huge difference in the way your article reads and how clear it is. Another pro tip, when you're naming your documents, you're naming files that you're going to email, include your last name in the document's file name. You know, a lot of mine articles will be, invoice.dempsey.doc. Any kind of file that you're naming, do not send something that you've named article.doc. Because for you, the writer, it may be the only article that you're writing, but on the publishing side, I have 25 articles. I have 50 articles. So article.doc does not help me to file away what you've sent and to put it in the right publication. The first thing I'm going to do is rename your file. When you write your title to your article, put important keywords into your title. Again, this is not the space to be cutesy or to be clever. This is not, the time to refer to a line of poetry or something like that. Clarity in the title is essential. If you don't have good keywords or a good descriptive title, I'm going to rewrite it for you. And I may not write what you want it to be, but on my end of the equation, the title has to explain to readers, has to catch their attention in a few seconds exactly what this article is about and how will it help them. What will it teach them? What will it help them to do better in their life or in their work? So again, note, there's a time to be creative and a time to be clear. And headlines are much more for clarity. If you're not sure about great words for something, if you're sick of using the same word over and over again, grab a thesaurus. There are words, as an editor, there are words that I see like 8 bazillion times a day, like library. You can replace that with organization or my place of work or anything at all. And again, as I say on the slide here, you want to do this for love, not for money, because sadly, publishing does not make a lot of money on the writer end or the editorial end. As you know, prices of some publications keep going up, but the number of advertisers keeps going down. There are a lot of complex things that go into the pricing of magazines and journals, which all affect how much the editors and the writers get paid. And I gotta admit to you, it's not a lot. So do this for love, do it for fame, don't do it for money, and then you won't be disappointed. Okay, I have in your handout section, which I'm going to leave you to look at most of the details in your handouts about book proposals. I have a whole section in the handout on book proposal expectations because those are quite different from proposals for magazine articles or newsletter, web articles, anything like that. If you want to write a book for any publishing company, they have very particular guidelines of what you have to send. A book proposal might be 5 or 10 pages long once you've filled everything in. You'll have to include your suggested title and subtitle, which will almost certainly change before the book is published. They'll ask you for a synopsis of what the book will be about. They'll want a preliminary table of contents, not the exact title of every chapter, but they want to see what every chapter will cover. They'll want to know about graphics that you have to use, and they'll want to know about your readership. Who will buy this book and why? So if you want to write a book, one of the things that you'll need to research beforehand is who are your competitors? How many similar books are already out there on this topic? What are those books and what did they do well, and maybe what did they not cover? Maybe books already exist on your topic, but there's one particular area that none of them covered well, and maybe that's what your book is going to be about. And who will buy it and why will they buy it? What types of librarians will buy it? They're going to ask you for a lot of information, so you can't just say, oh, here's a cool idea for a book. What do you think? Here it is. You're going to have to prove to them in your book proposal that this is something that's needed in the field, that people are looking for it, that it hasn't already been covered before, and that a lot of people are going to buy it. Because obviously it takes a lot more money to publish and print a book than it does a quick article. One quick note about the timing of book manuscripts. Of course, they have a much longer lead time than articles. Often publishers will give you a year to write the book after your proposal has been accepted, but they will give you, if they accept a book proposal from you, they will send you a timeline, exactly when first draft of a manuscript is due, or they may break it up by chapters. First 5 chapters due on this date, next 5 chapters due on the next date. And that's because clearly, an editor is not going to sit down in one day and read your entire book and edit that. So, and there is a lot more back and forth with book publishing as well. The editors may well send back certain chapters for you to rewrite or to spin a little bit differently, fill in some details that you're missing, things like that. So the book process is much different. And if anyone has questions specifically about the book publishing process, go ahead and add them in the chat box, and I'll keep an eye out for them. So your relationship with your editor is largely up to you. You can do everything right, you can give clear information, you can make her work easy, and so you will be happy, or you can just make her want to scream. And I've been in both places, and it's never boring, I'll tell you that. I do love editing because editing involves not just, as librarians get angry when people say, oh, how nice, you get to read all day. And you could very much say that of editors as well, but it's not just reading. It's dissecting. It's looking at everything carefully. It's looking at everything from the overall content down to the commas and the semicolons. So it's not really joyful reading, but in getting to read all sorts of library things, 2 or 3 or 4 times for each piece, I learn a lot, because you absorb a lot when you're reading something so closely so many times over. So that is one of the things that I do like about my job. I'll also point out now, if I have piqued your interest, okay, and I'm not, okay, starting to see questions in the chat box. If I have piqued your interest for any of this, the handout also includes a sample of writing guidelines for different places. And I have links in here for all sorts of places you might be interested in, like College and Research Libraries Magazine, Emerald Publishing Journals, SLA's Magazine, Information Outlook, Library Journal, some book publishers, all that sorts of things. So I'm trying to get you ready to write here. And the very end of the handout also has a resource list for writers. Some blog posts to recommend, some articles about writing. There's a book called The Librarian's Guide to Writing for Publications, and a number of other things here that will help you to get started. So I invite everyone to ask any questions that you have. I see one already from Harriet asking, what are your thoughts of self-publishing your book? Well, that's a very good question. It depends really on what your book is about. If it's a memoir or something non-professional, self-publishing could be a better option. It could be good for you. If your book is professional, if it's for the library press, I would absolutely not self-publish, because what you get along with your publishing is the expert editor who takes your text and makes it better, clearer, more interesting to read, and the marketing behind a major publishing house. To do that yourself is not as easy as it sounds. And again, it depends, Harriet. I'm not sure if you want to add anything to tell me what sort of topic that you're talking about or what sort of publisher you're looking at. But usually you need the marketing power of a publisher behind you, because sending your own press releases or making your own social media posts to try to promote your book just will, even if you send them to the places that publishers would send their press releases to, the official organizations are going to get more attention and more coverage. A pseudo press release from an individual about their self-published book is probably not going to make the cut. So, anyone else? Any questions? We have a couple minutes left. I know that it's a little difficult when most of you are just thinking about what you're going to want to write. So hopefully this will help to inform your decisions and help you to narrow your topics a little bit more so that they're clear. And if you don't have your exact topic yet, it makes it difficult to ask a question about this.
Thanks, Kathy.
Yes, I see. Go ahead, Anna. I see one more question coming up.
Right, I agree with you. We'll see. Wait, if Todd has a question coming in. Great presentation. Thank you very much for putting it together.
Certainly. Yet my favorite part is the roses, I have to admit.
They're a little different.
I know, quite unusual. Okay, good question from Todd. If your article idea does not fit a specific upcoming theme, can the editor hold on to it? Yes, they can. Whether they will or not is a question. Often I've gotten back to people and said, your idea is great. It doesn't fit what I'm doing for the May issue, but it might work in September. I will file this away in my September folder, but I will also recommend that said person sends the query again. You just copy and paste, by the deadline for September, because when you're juggling multiple publications, each with lots of articles, it's very easy for something to fall by the wayside. So while an editor may well decide to keep it, I would put the onus on the author to query again. Not only because I might forget it or lose it in the shuffle, but also because in the meantime, you, the author, might have found somewhere else to publish it. If you're waiting from May to September, you may say, well, forget it, I'm going to send this query out to a few other places, and it may not be available for me to publish again later. So I would put the onus on the author to make sure that it gets back again at the right time. Any other questions?
I have to agree with you there about things getting lost. Even editing very small association chapter publications, I know that things can just get lost in the weeds sometimes.
There's so many pieces, and you look at a publication and you think, oh, well, there was only 6 articles in this issue. But there's not only the 6 articles, there's maybe the 10 advertisements and the 8 departments that are shorter, and the table of contents has to be made every time, and the masthead has to be checked every time. So there are a lot more pieces in the publishing process than you might think. Yay, Teresa, I'm glad this was so informative.
All right, any other questions for Kathy? I just see a lot of thanks coming in, Kathy. That's what we want to see.
Yes.
I want to ask you what time zone you're in, but that's another thing altogether.
I don't even know what time zone I'm in today.
All right, I want to thank Kathy for a great presentation, and thank you all for attending. It was nice to see you here, and we'll see you again soon at another PCI webinar. Have a great afternoon, everybody.